When my daughter-in-law told me to leave, I smiled instead of crying. I remember that moment clearly, even now. My hands were folded in front of me, my bag already packed, and my heart felt strangely quiet. Not broken loudly, just quiet. She stood near the doorway, holding her phone, not looking at me. She did not raise her voice. She did not insult me. She only said, very softly, "It would be better if you stayed somewhere else for a while." I nodded, as if I understood. I even thanked her. That is the part that still surprises me. I walked out of my son's house that day, without tears. But something inside me stayed behind, sitting at that kitchen table where I once made soup for him when he was sick. I did not know then that this would be the last time I would feel like his mother. I did not know that silence can push you out of a family more gently than anger ever could. Sometimes betrayal does not come like a storm. Sometimes it comes like a calm afternoon, with clean floors and polite words. And by the time you realize what has happened, you are already outside the door. This is my story. It is not about shouting or fighting. It is about how I slowly lost my place in my own son's life, without anyone ever saying I was no longer welcome. I am a mother of one son. Just one. His name is Daniel. I raised him alone after his father passed away when Daniel was 8. We were not rich, but our home was warm. I worked long hours. I cooked simple meals. I listened to his school stories even when I was tired. Every night, I checked if he had brushed his teeth. Every morning, I made sure his shirt was clean. I did not think of myself as a strong woman back then. I was just doing what needed to be done. Daniel grew up kind, quiet. He was never loud or demanding. He learned early how to take care of himself, but he still came to me for comfort. When he left for college, the house became very quiet. I kept his room the same for years. His books, his bedspread, even the old lamp that flickered. I told myself it was fine, that this was life, that children grow up and move forward. When Daniel told me he was getting married, I felt two feelings at once: happiness and fear. I was happy because he sounded happy, and I was afraid because I knew my role would change. Her name was Claire. The first time I met her, she smiled politely. She was neat, soft-spoken, always well-dressed. She shook my hand instead of hugging me. I noticed that, but I told myself not everyone shows love the same way. At the wedding, she thanked me for raising Daniel so well. She said it with a smile, but it felt like a closing sentence, like a chapter ending. Still, I was hopeful. I told myself we would find our way. After the wedding, Daniel visited less. That was expected. New life, new responsibilities. When I visited them, I always called first. I brought food. I cleaned up after myself. I never stayed too long. I did everything a good mother-in-law is supposed to do. Claire was never rude. That is important to say. She was always calm, always polite. But she never asked me questions. She never asked about my life. She never sat beside me unless she had to. At dinner, she spoke to Daniel more than to me. She laughed with him, shared looks I did not understand. I told myself not to feel jealous. A mother should not compete with a wife. Still, I began to feel like a guest. Not family. Just someone passing through. It started with small things. The kind of things you tell yourself do not matter. Once, I rearranged the cups in the kitchen after washing them. Claire moved them back without saying a word. Another time, I bought Daniel a sweater. She smiled and said, "He already has too many." I stopped buying gifts after that. When I called Daniel, he answered less often. When he did answer, his voice felt distant. "I'm busy, Mom," he would say. "I'll call you later." Later rarely came. Once, I asked if I could come over for dinner. He hesitated, then said, "This week is not good." I asked about the next week. Same answer. I began to feel like I was asking for permission to exist in his life. Claire never told Daniel not to see me. At least, not in front of me. She did something quieter. She filled his time. She planned everything. She became the center of every decision. Daniel stopped asking me for advice. Stopped sharing his worries. Once, he used to call me when he was unsure. Now, he would say, "Claire thinks this is better." Not "we think." Always "Claire thinks." I listened. I smiled. I stepped back. I believed if I did not cause trouble, I would still have a place. I was wrong. Looking back, I see it now. The quiet replacement. The slow erasing. And Owen pushed me out suddenly. They simply stopped making space for me. I did not fight. I did not complain. I told myself love means letting go, but letting go should not mean disappearing. That time, I still believed things would settle. That my son would notice. That time would soften everything. That I did not know the hardest part was still coming. The part where silence would finally choose a side, and it would not be mine. After a while, I stopped asking myself what I had done wrong. Not because I had answers, but because the question itself became too heavy to carry every day. I told myself families change. Children grow. Mothers step back. That is what people say when they do not want to look too closely at their pain. Daniel's voice changed slowly. So slowly that I did not notice it at first. It became shorter. More careful. When he spoke to me, it felt like he was choosing his words the way someone chooses shoes before walking on thin ice. I missed the way he used to talk freely. Without thinking. Without guarding himself. One evening, I called him after work. It had been a long day. I just wanted to hear his voice. He answered, but he sounded tense. "Is everything okay?" I asked. There was a pause. Then he said, "Mom, you can't just call any time. Claire feels it interrupts our time." He said it calmly, as if reading something he had practiced. I apologized right away. I said I didn't realize. I said I would be more careful. After we hung up, I sat on my bed and stared at the wall. My phone felt heavy in my hand. I was afraid to call my own son. That fear stayed with me. It did not shout. It whispered. From that day on, I watched myself closely. How often I called. What time I called. What I said. I stopped talking about my feelings. I stopped mentioning when I felt lonely. I did not want to sound needy. I did not want to be too much. When I visited their home, I noticed new rules that were never spoken. Do not sit too long in the living room. Do not offer advice. Do not touch anything without asking. I followed them all. Still, I felt like I was failing a test I did not understand. This is something I need to say clearly. Claire was not openly cruel. She smiled. She thanked me. She spoke gently. But her kindness had edges. When she spoke to Daniel in front of me, she corrected him softly. She finished his sentences. She reminded him of things he had forgotten. She did it with a smile. Always with a smile. If I disagreed with something, even politely, she would say, "Oh, that's old-fashioned," or "That's not how we do things now." Daniel would nod. I began to feel very old. Not in years, but in relevance. There was a moment I remember clearly. A simple moment. We were sitting at the table. The three of us. Eating dinner. Daniel was telling a story from work. I laughed and said, "You were always good with people." Claire laughed too. Then she said, "He's different now." Different. She did not say it sharply. She said it proudly. Daniel smiled. Something closed inside my chest. I realized she was not just his wife. She was his translator, his filter, his voice. And I no longer spoke his language. When I went home after visits, the silence followed me. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that asks questions. I would sit at my kitchen table, alone. Sometimes I left the light on just to feel less invisible. I told myself not to blame Claire. I told myself Daniel was an adult. But at night, when the house was quiet, I wondered when I had stopped being someone he needed. I wondered if he noticed I was slipping away. Many times I wanted to say something. To ask him directly, "Are you okay with me? Did I do something wrong?" But every time I imagined the conversation, I saw his tired face. I heard his careful voice. I was afraid that if I asked, I would confirm what I already felt. So I stayed quiet. Silence felt safer than the truth. One afternoon, Daniel told me they were planning a holiday. He spoke quickly, like it was not important. "Oh, I said, "That sounds nice." I waited. He did not invite me. He did not ask if I wanted to join. I did not expect to go, but I expected to be considered. After we hung up, I realized something important. He no longer thought of me when planning his life. Not out of anger, not out of hate, just absence. Grief is not always loud. Sometimes it looks like folding laundry slowly. Sometimes it looks like eating dinner alone every night. I missed him in small ways. In the way I reached for my phone and stopped. In the way I saved leftovers without knowing why. I missed being part of his everyday life. And slowly, I began to feel like I was watching my own son from very far away. By then, I knew something had changed forever. But I still believed love would protect us. I believed that no matter how quiet the distance became, a mother and son would find their way back. I did not know that love alone is not always enough when someone else is quietly shaping the story. The moment that broke everything was closer than I thought. And when it came softly. Just like everything else. The message came on a quiet morning. Daniel asked if I could come stay with them for a few weeks. He said it casually. "Claire thinks it might be nice," he said. "She wants help around the house." I felt relief before I felt doubt. I told myself this was a good sign. A chance to be useful again. A chance to feel close to my son. I packed carefully. Not too much. Not too little. I told myself to be gentle. To stay out of the way. To not say the wrong thing. I did not know that I was walking into the moment where everything would finally become clear. Their house was quiet in a different way than mine. Clean. Organized. Controlled. Every object had a place. Every routine had a time. I tried to follow their rhythm. I woke up early. I made breakfast quietly. I cleaned what I used. Claire thanked me often. But her thanks felt like reminders. "Thank you for not using too much water. Thank you for keeping the kitchen neat." Each sentence sounded kind. But together, they felt like rules. Daniel said very little. When he did speak, it was usually to agree with her. One evening, I cooked Daniel's favorite meal. The same one I used to make when he was young. He smiled when he tasted it. For a moment, I saw my son again. Then Claire said softly, "You didn't ask before cooking." I froze. "I'm sorry," I said. "I just thought." She interrupted gently. "We like to plan our meals." Daniel looked down at his plate. He did not say anything. That silence hurt more than her words. After that night, things changed quickly. Not loudly, but clearly. If I spoke, Claire corrected me. If I hesitated, Daniel grew impatient. Once, I asked where to put the groceries. He sighed. "Mom, Claire already explained this." The word mom sounded sharp, like a warning. I began to feel like a child in their home, a guest who had stayed too long. It happened on a rainy afternoon. The house felt heavy, too quiet. Claire asked Daniel to talk to me. He sat across from me at the table. His hands were folded, just like mine had been years ago when I spoke to him about hard things. "Mom," he said, "there's tension." That word again. Tension. He said Claire felt uncomfortable, that I was too involved, that my presence was affecting their peace. I listened without interrupting. My heart beat slowly. I asked one question. What did I do? He hesitated, then said, "It's not one thing." That answer told me everything. Claire never raised her voice. She never insulted me. She simply framed the story. I was the problem, the source of discomfort, the reason for tension. And Daniel believed it, not because he stopped loving me, but because loving her came first now. I understood then. He was choosing peace in his home, and I was not part of that peace. Later that evening, Claire stood near the doorway. Daniel was beside her. She spoke first. "It would be better if you stayed somewhere else for a while." Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Daniel did not look at me. I nodded. I said I understood. I smiled. Because crying would have made things harder. Because I did not want to be remembered as difficult. I packed slowly. Each item felt heavier than it should have. Daniel stood in the hallway. He did not help. I wanted him to stop me.
to say something.
Anything. He did not. The door closed quietly behind me. Outside, the rain had stopped. The street was calm. I stood there for a moment holding my bag, looking at the house where I no longer belonged. I did not feel angry. I felt empty. I realized then that I had lost something I could not get back. Not my son, but my place in his life. That night, I slept somewhere else, in a quiet room that was not mine. I replayed every moment in my head, every word, every silence. I finally understood. I was not pushed out with force. I was eased out with reason. And that kind of loss has no one to blame and nowhere to return. The room I stayed in that night smelled like fresh soap and nothing else. It was clean. Too clean. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the silence. Not the kind that rests you, the kind that waits. I placed my bag on the floor and did not unpack. I did not know how long I would be there. I did not know where I belonged anymore. For the first time in my life, I felt truly unnecessary. The next morning, I woke up early out of habit. My body still remembered years of responsibility. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window. The sky was pale, quiet. I checked my phone. No messages. I told myself Daniel would call later, that he just needed time. Time passed slowly. Days went by without his voice. At first, I counted them. Then I stopped. I wanted to call him. I wanted to ask if he was okay, if he missed me. But I was afraid of the answer. So I waited. Waiting became my routine. When Daniel finally called, his voice sounded normal. Too normal. He asked if I had settled in, if I was comfortable. He did not ask if I was hurt. I told him I was fine, because that is what mothers say. Claire spoke in the background. I could hear her. He ended the call quickly. I stared at my phone for a long time after. I felt ashamed. Not because I had done something wrong, but because I had been dismissed. I wondered if I had been too quiet, too careful, too willing to disappear. I wondered if being kind had made me easy to remove. These thoughts came at night. They sat beside me. When I returned to my house, everything was the same. And everything was different. His room was still there. The lamp still flickered. But I knew now he would never sleep there again. I closed the door gently. Life became small. Not empty. Just quiet. I went for walks. I cooked for one. I listened to the radio softly. I stopped waiting for my phone to ring. I began to breathe again. I thought about Claire often. Not with anger, but with clarity. She wanted a peaceful home. I did not fit into the picture she was building. I could understand that without accepting the pain it caused. Some understanding does not heal. It only explains. One evening, Daniel sent a short message. Hope you're doing okay. I read it many times. I replied, I am. Take care. That was all. I began to see something clearly. My worth did not come from being needed. I had loved my son fully. I had done my part. What happened after was not something I could control. Letting go did not mean forgetting. It meant releasing myself. I still think of Daniel every day. Love does not disappear. But I no longer wait in pain. I carry him quietly, the way I carry him when he was small. Some losses are not loud. They leave you softly. And in that softness, I learned how to stand again. Love changes shape as we grow older. When Daniel was small, love meant holding his hand. Later, it meant letting him walk alone. I did not know that one day, love would mean stepping aside completely. At first, that thought felt cruel, unfair. But over time, I learned something gentle. Love does not disappear when it is no longer returned in the same way. It simply becomes quieter. People often ask if I forgave Claire.
I do not know how to answer that.
Forgiveness does not always come with words or understanding. Sometimes it comes with distance. I do not carry anger toward her. Anger would keep me tied to a story that is no longer mine. I wish her peace, because peace is what she wanted. Daniel still lives inside my thoughts. In the way I pause before crossing the street. In the way I save his favorite mug. I do not reach out often. Not because I do not care, but because I have learned to respect the life he chose. If he ever needs me, I will be here. That part of me will never change. Acceptance is not giving up. It is understanding what cannot be changed. I cannot return to that house. I cannot reclaim that place. But I can live fully where I am. I can wake up without fear. I can breathe without waiting. I can exist without asking permission. If you are listening to this and you feel slowly pushed aside, please know this. Silence does not mean you are unworthy. Being excluded does not erase the love you gave. Sometimes people choose comfort over connection. That choice is theirs. Your value remains. My home is quieter now, but it is mine. I fill it with light, with calm mornings, with gentle evenings. I have learned to sit with myself without feeling lonely. That is a kind of strength no one can take away. I did not lose my son to anger or hate. I lost him to quiet decisions made without me. And yet, I am still here. Still loving, still whole. Sometimes, the bravest thing a mother can do is let go without becoming bitter. And in doing so, find herself again.